Good morning, Danika Watson, nurse practitioner. We are going to discuss a little bit of teenagers and COVID today. Remember, this is a disclaimer. This is not medical advice, diagnosis, or recommendation. This does not take the place of a well child check or a sick visit. If you have any questions, please contact your healthcare provider or your pediatrician. So we have been in this pandemic for almost a year now, and many of you have gotten COVID and recovered, thankfully. And I just want to reach out to the parents of teenagers and give you a little bit of information. Especially since it was brought to my attention recently, not everyone has heard this or is doing this. But the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that if you are over 12 years of age and have symptoms, so like if you are symptomatic for 3 days, like if you have fever, an ongoing cough, difficulty breathing, dizziness, any of that, then it's recommended for you to get an EKG before participating in any kind of physical activity. Now, that physical activity doesn't have to be a sports. It doesn't have to be athletics. It can be PE. It can be you going to the YMCA and shooting hoops with your friends. But whatever that physical activity may be that you do, it is highly recommended if you're over 12 and if you've had, 3 days of prolonged symptoms, that you have an EKG. And the rationale behind that is that we have found COVID can cause multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children. And what that means is, you just have this, like it says, a multi-system, like your organ system, has an inflammatory process that goes on. It can affect your heart, it can affect your kidneys, it can affect any organ in your body with this inflammation, particularly your heart. If this happens and it's subtle and we don't catch it, and you go and you accelerate in these high cardiovascular activities, you could have some deficits from it. So when your pediatrician recommends that you get an EKG before you go back to sports, go back to athletics, go back to PE, it's not to put you out. It's really because it's indicated and we're trying to keep you safe. We want to make sure that the virus hasn't caused some unknown damage to your organs prior to letting you just jump out on the field and go all out. Now, if you have any questions or you feel like you haven't, maybe your child should have had one of these and didn't, reach out to your healthcare provider. There is a time period, from the time symptoms are on to the time the child is free of symptoms when this should actually be done and taking place. So, your healthcare provider may be waiting on that window, but it does not hurt to call them to ask if you are concerned or if you feel like your child should have had one and hasn't. But again, it's just to make sure your child is super safe, and to make sure that there's nothing underlying going on that we can't see or feel with a physical exam. Again, we all know that this virus can have minimal symptoms all the way to the worst symptoms, and outcomes. So we're just trying to be, like I said, really safe, take care of your kid to the best of our ability as practitioners. Holler if you do have any questions.